How exciting. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. We're slowly filling up the space. This is super exciting. 81 people. Amazing. Oh, there's Chris. Hey, Chris. Chris in Quebec. Good to see you. Just letting everybody in before we get started. Maybe, Duncan, you're going to keep working on the waiting room for me. That would be fantastic. Well, you know what? We have an incredible panel of 8 educators and we have an hour. So I'd love us to get started. Welcome, everybody. I'm so honored that you're here to talk about imaginative and ecological pedagogies. I want to begin by saying my name is Gillian Judson, and I currently reside on the unceded territories of the Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations people. This is such an important time in our lives to make a difference, and I think I would love it if you would add to the chat where you're joining us from. Whose land do you live on? Whose land are we trying to connect our students to? Whose land are we aiming to develop emotional connections with? I think it's important to hold space for this. And if you would add that to the chat, then we can take a moment and acknowledge where we're coming from all across the nation. It's nice to see the faces. Hi, Megan. Megan's currently doing her MEd in Imaginative Education. Calling you out there, Megan. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking this time to add to the chat. I hope you're comfortable using the chat function because we invite you today to add your questions to the chat as they occur to you. What we're going to do today is I'm going to introduce an amazing panel of recent graduates from our MEd program in Imaginative Education. All of the panelists today have done research in imaginative pedagogies and have experience doing outdoor and ecological practices such as the walking curriculum. It's going to be like a speed thing. They're going to share about 3 to 4 minutes of their tips for you. We are thinking about all educators that think about taking their work outside and might have some hesitancy, might have some worries. How do we move past that and really transform teaching for our students? And so that's sort of the vision for the day. I do want to acknowledge that this webinar is being hosted by CBean and the Outdoor Learning Store. And there's a host of partners that are involved in this operation. Duncan has been kind enough to set this up, but there are so many partners involved in this network. He's going to put a link in the chat. So if you're interested who's involved in the network, or if you'd like to be involved in the network, please have a look at those. And so as we go through, as I said, add your questions to the chat. Each educator today is going to be adding one aspect of their insight based on their research and their practice using imaginative in ecological pedagogies. So I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, but I am going to start with their name and also the title of the research. If you're interested in looking at their full research, you can find those studies on ImagineEd, most of them. And if it's not there, we can maybe connect you with the author. educationthatinspires.ca. So we're going to start today with Alyssa Dixon, whose research is entitled Unzipping the Jacket, Using Cognitive Tools to Dissolve Feelings of Otherness Between Students and the Natural World. So as Alyssa takes over, I would recommend for best viewing that you put it on speaker view. That way the person speaking will not be an inch wide, but will take up a larger portion of your screen. So Alyssa, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm just getting my share on.
Yeah, it looks good.
Can you see that? Can you see it? Okay. I feel like I don't really know what you can see. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. Thank you, Gillian, for introducing me. I'm Alyssa Dixon. I work in Surrey School District, teaching grade 4 and grade 5, and I just finished my MEd with a focus in imaginative education, and was definitely really focused on ecological education as well. So my research was about dissolving otherness between students in the natural world. And this kind of came to me because I was really thinking with my class about how we were talking about the other, the natural world, as this separate entity from us. And when my students were talking, when I was even talking myself, and that kind of started to make me think, how can we feel a deeper connection with something when we don't actually recognize how interconnected we are? And that there's this kind of illusion of this wall, this separation, the in here, the out there, the us and the them. And how can we use the tools of imaginative education to dissolve that illusion? So through lots of emotionally engaging experiences, my class, we're lucky to have a beautiful forest behind us. We would head out there every day and just soak it in. We were changing our language, the way that we talked about the beings that we were interacting with. And through this just deep revisiting, relearning, reconnecting with the space, I did begin to see those kind of walls dissolving, just in the way that the students were talking, were feeling. We had a lot of experiences where the students were just kind of reaching beyond the way of norm of how many people in society talk about nature. And remember one time there was sadly a bird that had died on the ground, and the class was fully all consumed by it for 45 minutes of asking questions, of talking about the bird's life and who's missing them, what do the trees have stories to share with us. And they were going, to other beings in the forest and asking them about the bird's experiences and really listening and connecting. And I think there was just so many things like that happening from this work with learning the story and knowing more about the place. And through my work, I think the main goal for me is that reimagining of a world where the care for beings is at the center. And I feel like it's really hard to do that if we feel separate. So I would invite you to reflect on this as well, in how are we perceiving the natural world, and where and how does that actually then impact the way we're talking with our students. So yeah, I just wanted to invite you to think about that. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. I appreciate that very much. And if you have questions related possibly to Alyssa's research or anything she said, please add that to the chat. I'm going to now quickly find the next person's slide, which is Andrea Alberti. And I'm going to share my screen. It's all so smooth when you practice and less smooth when you have lots of people watching. There, that should work. And I'd like to pass it over now to Andrea Alberti, who did research related to inclusivity. Where do I fit? And in her research, she was using the Learning in Depth program as a tool for inclusivity. Over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gillian. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm going to speak really quickly to keep under my time limit. So here we go. I'm Andrea. I teach grade 1 in Burnaby. I've been engaging with the walking curriculum with my class for the past few years in a more meaningful and deliberate focus last year as I completed my master's degree. Although I didn't do my final research project in IEE, I applied much of what I learned through my research when facilitating the walking curriculum walks with my class. So for my wonder to worry with IEE was, this all sounds fantastic, but how does it look in a class of diverse learners? So last year I had quite a diverse group, including 4 students with autism spectrum disorder. And within that, each had a particular set of needs. And for some students, primary concern was safety in our outdoor spaces. So when you first look at the walking curriculum, it can be really overwhelming. And I know for me, there was this immediate desire to have an amazing IEE outdoor experience in wide open natural spaces where everyone can engage their emotions to place right from the start. But my answer to this worry, and for all of you, is to start small and even in the classroom. So before we even stepped outside, I took some time to find out which cognitive tools my students preferred to engage with, particularly the diverse learners. And I strongly recommend this step. It can be a little bit time consuming, and side note, cognitive tools are all a part of imaginative education, and that's a whole other lecture in itself, but I know that it can all be found on the IE websites. But take that time to do that step, because understanding which cognitive tools the students connected with allowed me to make my walks outside more meaningful and impactful. and then using their answers. And in my class, it was games, puzzles, and drama were their cognitive tools that they preferred. We chose our first walk. And so I'll just give you a little bit of a practical example. So we chose to do a line walk, which I presented in the form of a game. Walk along any line that you can find in the fenced in upper parking lot. So yes, it was in cement. Yes, it was fenced in, but we were still connecting to our place. And although we started small and on concrete, no less, the students were able to engage their imaginations and bodies with the most familiar place of all, where they entered the school every day. And then as students gained understanding of safety and boundaries within our walks, we expanded to a greener area of the school, which was also very contained and fenced in. And we engaged in puzzles and mystery walks, zooming in on mysteries that we found in our schoolyard and applying cognitive tools along the way. And then when I felt the students through their application of the cognitive tools had gained a sense of stewardship and responsibility for the safety of themselves within the outdoor learning spaces, we expanded to an area of the school grounds that was not fenced in. So that's what we see on the slide there with the 3 pictures. And these 3 pictures were taken over the course of the full school year. So just to show that it can start really small and in a progression. And I can be a proven case that IEE is not only just a possible tool, but a wonderful one to use with diverse learners, because when given the opportunity to engage with preferred cognitive tools that connects these students to the living world beyond the classroom, diverse learners can use their body's unique learning tools and allow emotion and imagination to work together to expand and demonstrate their knowledge. So in my class, not only were the students excited for our walks, they demonstrated a real sense of wonder and care for the space. So if you're wondering that same worry as me, how does this look with diverse learners? It is possible, and I encourage you to try it. Thank you.
I got to work with these amazing educators for 2 years. Lucky me, right? So excited that you're willing to share your work. Everybody that's here today. I'm going to pass it over to another excellent example of imaginative education, and that is Jenna MacArthur, who is going to also share her tips for those that are beginning to use or advanced use of imaginative ecological education. Jenna?
Perfect. Thanks, Gillian. So hi, everyone. My name is Jenna MacArthur, and I teach kindergarten. Growing up, some of my fondest childhood memories were spent outdoors. In my own schooling, I grew to appreciate and love places outside of my own school community. However, I wish that I had been given more opportunities to explore my immediate local surroundings and school campus. So at the beginning of my research, I noticed a variety of comfort levels when students were outside. Many were hesitant to get dirty and were more keen to go back inside. I was also taken aback when I saw students hitting and throwing rocks at trees. So after observing students outside, I thought to myself, would these actions be occurring if students had built an emotional connection to our school campus? And I also reflected on my own relationship to the land where I worked, and I wondered if it needed to be redefined. My first tip is to start small, similar to Andrea, and explore a small area on your campus so you don't feel overwhelmed. For me, that was implementing West Coast Wednesdays, where I spent an extra amount of time outside, ranging from 15 minutes to an entire afternoon every Wednesday. It was important that we first created a nature agreement that outlined our nature expectations, and you can see that on the far right. This consistent routine of our outside visits generated excitement, created a sense of security, and fostered our relationship with nature. My lessons were crafted around 2 of the placemaking cognitive tools of IEE, emotional attachment to objects and creation of special places. I also found the cognitive tool of metaphor, specifically the metaphor of bucket filling in nature, inspired by the book, Have You Filled a Bucket Today?, to help students take on the perspective of nature and understand that nature's bucket can also be filled or dipped by our own personal actions. Another tip I would suggest is to be open-minded to future possibilities and perspectives. Although I was mindful of crafting intentional and meaningful outdoor learning opportunities, I quickly learned that taking students outside isn't always going to be smooth sailings. You need to be vulnerable, let go, step back, and embrace nature as co-teacher. Students need to be able to cultivate their own emotional connection to the land. Some of our outside activities that focused on the placemaking cognitive tools included going on a community walk, having a wonder window in the classroom, We befriended special rocks and trees and made birdhouses. I also used picture books to enhance my IE lessons, including Trudy's Healing Stone and lessons from Mother Earth. All these activities provided a great foundation for when we created our very own kindergarten, which became one of our special places on campus. The kindergarten played a larger role in my research than I had initially anticipated, and for many students, gardening was a new adventure. I observed a shift from hesitation to infatuation, where students were leaning into nature. The kindergarten students were now asking to take off their gardening gloves, which was great. We're saving rather than squishing bugs, and we're reminding friends to always ask for permission when digging or harvesting from the garden. It was evident that IEE principles were supporting students develop a culture of care on our campus. When I asked the students why it was important that we take care of the gifts of nature, one student said, quote, "That is because nature made those things, and it is very important to cherish them." One of my greatest takeaways was realizing the important role that we as teachers play in nurturing students' relationship with nature. We too need to bond with the natural world, and students need to see us interacting with nature. It's only when you discover, explore, feel, and relate to the land through the eyes of your students as well as your own that you reawaken your sense of place for where you teach. So don't be afraid to step outside those classroom walls, get dirty, and embrace nature's gifts.
Thank you so much, Jenna. That's fantastic. And I should have mentioned that Jenna's research is called Filling Nature's Bucket One Small Act at a Time, an imaginative education approach to connecting, relating, and appreciating place. So if you're interested in Jenna's research, you can privately message her and you might be able to talk to her more about that. So next, I'd like to turn it over to Denny James. And Denny is a French teacher, and maybe there's some language teachers in the group. Denny's research was entitled Stepping Outside the Walls, Teaching the Whole Child in a Primary French Immersion Classroom. Denny?
Great, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen here. In theory, 1 sec, sorry. Okay, can anybody see my shared screen?
I'm afraid not. Did you get the bottom click there?
Sorry about that. I also sent it to Gillian just in case I'm not able to open it, but I will try it again.
All right, if need be, I can download it.
Thank you.
We love technology.
Yeah,
Nothing yet.
sometimes.
Okay, there we go.
It's
Maybe.
coming?
I think so. There we go. Yay.
All right,
Okay,
super.
over to you, Jenny.
Okay, so I'm Denny James and I teach grade 2 French immersion in Coquitlam. I don't know how many of you teach French, but you may hesitate to take your children outside because, as you know, as soon as they get outside, they speak in English. Well, I was in that camp too. And then I did my master's and I decided I would give it a shot. I took the plunge and I took my learners outside. I realized that their social emotional selves needed to move and be outside, and that the learning that they did in French was better once they had been outside. So what works for me, and I will, I'll just quickly show you here. I tended to put my students into a circle as soon as we got outside so I could share our learning intentions. We did that all in French, and then they would go off. I'd tell them what their boundaries were and they would explore. I'd follow around and help them with their French vocabulary so that when we came back to circle at the end, they could share out in French. I teach a lot of vocabulary when we're outside, so they can touch different things and ask me what it is. They pick up leaves and acorns and pointed insects and touch trees and look at birds, and I speak in French to them, and I expect them to repeat the vocabulary back to me. And again, they then have a toolkit of French words. So when we sit down and we share out, they're ready to share in French. And I review it again when we go back into the classroom. So a resource that I used a lot is Gillian's walking curriculum. So it's available in French and it's called Apprendre pas à pas. And it's a fabulous resource. Gillian, thank you so much, because it gives us a whole bunch of outdoor walks aligned with the curriculum. and they're designed to activate the imaginations of your learners. So because I read more quickly in English, I have both copies. I have Walking Curriculum in English, and I have a Cultivating Passive Pass, so I have all the vocabulary available. And it's all about cognitive tools, like Andrea was saying. So we do things like we start our walks with maybe a song that we wrote. Right now we're learning about matter. So it's les solides, les liquides, le gaz, les trois états de la matière, on la masse. Or I maybe am going to give them a comic that they like from Calvin and Hobbes, or a story, or an imaginative adventure. So I don't know, I'll rush through this because I know we don't have a lot of time, but I thought maybe we should try it out. So what I want you to do is we're going to do one of Gillian's walks super, super quickly, just to show you how easy this is. I want you to imagine a place near your school that you could take your learners to. With my learners, we would actually be there, so we wouldn't have to imagine the place. But then choose a place. Think at my school, we have a lake, so we can walk around the lake and you can see the bushes and the trees and hear the birds and see the waves lapping on the shore. Do that. Create that space in your head. You're there. Now I want you to imagine that you're an insect. Okay, so get that insect into your head. Is your insect going to have a bumpy body or a smooth body? What color is your insect? How many arms and legs does it have? Does it have wings? I want you to think about this insect. Maybe you've already seen the Titan beetle. That's one of the largest insects in the world. It's bigger than my hand. Or maybe you're as tiny as a little fairy fly, which is like about the size of a little bit of pepper. Whatever your insect is, get that into your head. Now think of all the rain that we've been having lately. If you're that insect and you go outside, where are you going to go to protect yourself from the rain? What kind of shelter could you find outside? So our learning intention for today is we're going to go out and we're going to find some shelter that your insect, your personal little being that you've become, could get out of the rain. So off you go. I'm going to give you 10 minutes and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about it. And I'm going to walk around and take pictures while you're exploring to see what that little place is. Welcome to the walking curriculum. So this is just a very, very quick little snapshot of things that you can do. I did put in some pictures here of the Titan beetle and the little fairy fly because I thought they were amazing, just so that you can see them. And that's a sampling. It's an amazing resource and it's really one that I recommend. So thank you. If you need to contact me with any follow-up questions, this is my contact information. I'm at Porter Street Elementary. Thank you.
Maybe we just need to have another webinar with fewer people on our panel. Thank you. I love the passion, and that was a great example of setting the imaginative context. So thank you, Denny. I'd like to ask now Kelsey Keller to share for a moment and her research entitled Restless Wildlings on Placemaking, Imaginative Explorations in Forest School. If you happen to follow the Imaginative blog, she just put a post out where there's a link to the actual research. So Kelsey, over to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Gillian. Before I start, I just wanted to let everyone know that today I'm joining you from the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people here in British Columbia. And I am excited to be here with you guys. So I didn't make a slide. My colleagues here have outdone me in an amazing way. But what I do want to share with you is a little bit of my research journey. So I have the unique privilege of keeping my learners for 3 years. I have them for grade 3 and grade 4 and grade 5. And we spend a lot of time in the forest and outside. And I was starting to notice with my learners a little bit of consumerism happening. I was noticing my learners where, we would be in a forest space and they would run around and it was like they had to find the biggest and the best and the smallest and the, the shiniest and look how many of this I have. And they were stockpiling rocks. And it really was about consuming the forest. It was really about getting to things first and having the best of things and the biggest of things. And it became a little bit uncomfortable for me, being raised in sort of that consumerism kind of an economy, being raised in a gift-giving economy, where there's a reciprocity and we're giving and taking and working kind of in collaboration. And so that's where my research started. And so I took them into the forest and they started to beg me about we need to expand the boundaries of forest school. And I should let you know, they are considerably big. They are up sides of hills, they are in swamps, they are climbing trees, they are rolling down hills. It is a really beautiful, luscious space for us to be in, but they wanted different spaces. They felt that they had consumed this space already. They'd figured it out. And so they were begging me to expand. And I decided to kind of lean into the tension and to embrace the wisdom of David Jardine, who is an amazing educator and educational theorist. And he writes a lot about restlessness. And this has become kind of a core belief of mine. And he says that in education, when children are kind of restless, they have this frenetic energy, our inclination is to take the amount of choice and space and fragment it. And so instead of giving them the whole forest, maybe we say, oh, you can only do this space, or we can only do this activity, or you need to be here. And we chunk it smaller and smaller and smaller. And I wanted to see what would happen if we just gave the kids this kind of luscious forest to explore instead of fragmenting it, and let them sit in this space and to be bored and to lament it and to beg for more. And through that process, they started to notice things they hadn't noticed before, and they started to build relationships. And so my research really kind of hinges on two of the core tenets of imaginative ed, which are story and emotional or affective engagement. And so, within this restlessness, they started to explore and connect with new other than human beings in the forest. They started to really slow down. They started to notice things they had missed before. They started to kind of come alive as the forest gifted them new learning and new understanding and new relationships. And as these relationships started to grow, I pulled out a book called The Fate of Fausto, which is by Oliver Jeffers. And it's a really great book. I highly recommend it if you're thinking of taking your kids outside. Really what it is Fausto is a big pompous patootie who believes he owns everything in the natural world. And he goes around claiming things. This is mine, and this is mine, and this is mine. And he feels so self-important that he sets out on a boat to conquer the sea. And the sea is not inclined to be conquered. And so as he stamps his foot in anger, she says, well, show me how hard you can stamp it. And he climbs over the side of the boat to show her, and the ocean consumes him. And it's a little bit morbid in that sense. But what I loved about it and what my learners really hung to is, if we don't respect these other than human beings as autonomous beings, as beings with their own personhood, and if we create them or honor them like a product, we can't build relationship with them. And so we really set out to honor and build relationship. And through that relationship building, which really spawned out of the stories that these kids were creating in this forest space with these other than human beings, they started to really ponder about, well, what are the stories that came before us, and what stories will come after us, and how will we capture these stories in a way that somebody else will know that we've been here and that we have relationships with these beings. And so through that process, we came to map out our forest space, which was a really huge undertaking. But really mapping out who is in this forest and what are our relationships to them and what stories live here and what emotions are solicited when we're in the space and we think about this space. So that was kind of where we ended up, was with this mapping. So what started with consumerism turned into restlessness, which turned into relationships. And eventually we really got to that gift-giving economy where the forest and us were one. We were a family, and engaging in that gift-giving back and forth, and really building a beautiful story together. And through that, their emotions, every emotion, good, bad, and ugly, was really engaged. So if you want to hear more about it, Gillian said that it's up on the blog. You can also check out kelseykeller.com. It's there for you to check out as well, or feel free to reach out and contact me. Thanks so much.
Oh, there have to be questions. We've got a fifth inspired form of research. Please consider adding your questions to the chat. We'll have time to look at those in just a second. Thank you so much, Kelsey. I'd like to now pass it to Krista Rushman, who has a really fantastic and important topic, and hers was connecting to concrete, an ethnographic exploration of placemaking in an urban schoolyard, because I know many of us do work in that context. So over to you, Krista.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Welcome. I am coming to you from the Mathqui and Sumath First Nations, which is part of the Stalo First Nations. And I don't have a screen share either, although I was considering showing you pictures of where my school is so that you can get an idea. When we first started learning about imaginative ecological education, I was so excited. I loved the idea of it. And was so frustrated because so many people in our master's cohort were talking about the beautiful forest spaces that were just outside their playground gates, or the lake that was nearby, or the green space that was a block away. And I teach in Abbotsford in BC, which is sounds like a small town, but where I teach, it's actually quite an urban area. And I was really frustrated. Because I didn't know how I was going to do this with what was available to me around our playground and our classroom. We have some big old trees, but we also have 2 hotels across the street. One of them houses folks that are like part of a mental health program. We're a block away from the freeway and the on-ramp. We're on an ambulance route and also a flight path. And so the first time I decided to take my class outside, I thought I'll just let them connect with outside and be outside, and they'll just know what to do because they're children, and children are drawn to the outdoors. And I just kind of let them go. And I compared it to tipping a jar of spiders. They just sort of went everywhere and know where they were supposed to and did everything, but nothing that they were supposed to. And the class that I had that year was had a lot of challenges and needs in it. I think I had about 4 students out of 21 that could self-regulate regularly. And we also had 4 IEPs and another 2 who were on their way towards a designation. So it was a busy class, and in an area where I wasn't sure that I could keep them safe. Because of the pandemic last year, we had staggered recesses. And so I only had about 30 minutes in our backfield. And I quickly discovered that's just not enough time for kids to connect. So I moved them to our front field and gave them strict instructions to stay off the road, and tried to help them build a connection with the place that we were, with our place, with our schoolyard. And that's not always easy. We have discarded needles. We have a lot of homeless nearby. So there was some concerns with bringing them out into the front where there's no gate or fence or anything to kind of keep them contained and away from possible dangers, but they did a great job. And what I soon learned was that when I framed their learning with a story, magical things happened. Things that didn't seem to be very inspiring or exciting or unique became wonderful things. I could kind of help draw their attention to all of the little wonders in the front of our school. Little things like ladybugs and snails and leaves on trees and lichen on the tree bark. And suddenly they started to notice those things too. And the front of our school, as uninspiring as it seemed to be, started to become very inspiring and interesting for them. And as they started to find the beautiful things in the front of our school, they started to learn how to settle into nature, how to see nature as a part of themselves, and how to see themselves and where their role is in supporting and protecting and loving on the nature that was around us. So it was a really beautiful experience. And I got to practice story writing, and I got to practice using cognitive tools to, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I got to practice using cognitive tools to help my students build an emotional engagement with something that I didn't think was possible, but I should know better by now. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I am happy to answer any questions and to encourage and support anybody who wants to try imaginative education in an urban setting.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm just like, someone put in the chat, this is blowing my mind. This is blowing my mind. It really is. And we're starting to get some questions in the chat. This is fantastic. We're going to have time to address those in just a moment. Thank you so much, Krista. I'd like to pass it now to Shannon, who teaches with Krista. And Shannon's study was called Artivism, Igniting Social Justice Through Visual Arts and Imagination. So over to you, Shannon.
Thank you. I love my portmanteau words. I find them imaginative in themselves. So yeah, artivism, art and activism. So I'll just share my screen here if I can figure out how to do that. And can you see it? Okay, perfect. So present. I'll make it bigger so you can see my head even larger. There we go. So yes, I teach at the same school as Krista, who you just heard from. So our schoolyard is not the most beautiful place to live and learn, but it's what we have. And it does have some very surprising things that lead to some excellent eco-exploration, even without there being wonderful, beautiful, pristine things to go and explore. Not always the safest, but that also teaches us really good lessons. So my research was called Artivism, so that's art and activism, igniting social agency or social justice through visual arts and imagination. Our school is an arts integration school, so we teach the regular curriculum. It's a public school, but we teach our regular curriculum through integrating either visual arts, drama, dance, music, creative writing, art and technology. So we really it's the school I wish that I learned at as a kid. So I really enjoy teaching here. I teach grade 5, and I have older learners that are less likely to go out and be silly and imaginative. And I wondered what igniting the imagination amongst the older students who are getting ready to go to middle school and they're very cool and they don't want to get wet outside because what if their shoes get dirty? I wanted to know what it would look like for them. So what inspired me at first was Frank. Frank is on the lower left-hand corner of your screen. You can see Frank is a bald-faced hornet, which we learned after doing some exploration, because when Frank flew into our classroom, everybody screamed, "Murder a hornet, kill it." And so then all the kids are either screaming at the top of their lungs, running in the coat room, banging on, like they're trying to kill this hornet. Sorry, the choppers are flying past to drain the lakes. Anyway, so they were trying to kill this hornet, and I said, "Stop, this is a no-killing classroom. What do you think we should do to solve our problem?" And so they came up with a system, well, we should trap it and then set it outside. And that really set alight us walking outside, getting outside for the first time. Our door opened, Frank flew off, and one of the students turned and said, "Where is he going?" And I said, "Well, probably home." And he said, "Where's that?" And I said, "Let's look." So we really investigated that. It took a long time. If you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, those are 2 of my students. They've discovered through our metal fencing one of the few bushes that we have on our school property. They didn't know what it was. It's known as the prickle bush, and they were squishing the berries on it to create blood. So they were destroying them, going, let's make blood. So they were smacking at it, and you can see the red on the wood just kind of bleeding out. Well, that led to an investigation as well. And we discovered that we actually have Oregon grape growing on our school property, and it is an indigenous species. And that caused a lot of other exploration. So that really fueled me to start thinking about how I can develop a sense of agency in my students. How can I make this relevant to them? I toured at UBC. We had Kent Monkman, who's an amazing, amazing artist, showing his work there, Shame and Prejudice. And when I saw his work, and I was thinking about truth and reconciliation, this is before we started our large scale discoveries of unmarked graves. I just was entirely consumed with his work. And I thought art is such an amazing entry point for developing agency. It's something that everyone can do to their own ability levels. It's a way to express emotion and connect emotionally in a visual sense, even pre-language. Even before we have the language tools to be able to explain ourselves and how we feel, we can connect through the arts. And if we connect, issues related to ecology and art together, what could we do in terms of helping with truth and reconciliation? So that is something that sparked my research. And then by the end of it, oh, what a terrible screenshot. By the end of it, we created a video and an art project that combined a bunch of different things. I know you're probably not getting the audio, but okay. It ended up talking about residential school system, ended up doing cyanotype prints to connect with nature that we honorably harvested blocks. We collaborated with our Indigenous cultural support workers. We had an art show at a local art gallery, and you can see that they were dripping the paint across. That was actually to talk about where they came from and their own path to coming to this land, how they can take care of it. And then it actually wrote our own land acknowledgements. So each child wrote an individual land acknowledgement that spoke about where they personally came from, their family came from, how to connect with our land, because I wanted land acknowledgement to be something meaningful and specific and not a token or something that's meaningless or something that's just said ceremoniously at the beginning of a gathering. I wanted it to be meaningful and for them to connect why they should be caring for this land that they are on and given. So through art and through exploration and by a hornet, this is where we got. So yeah.
Shannon, is there a link? Is it on YouTube? Is there a link to that video you could put into the chat?
Yeah, I'll just stop sharing here and then
you can do that. I'm sure many people would like to follow up with that later.
Yeah, check it out later. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Wow. And last but not least, Rosetta Redford, who's here, and her research is entitled Loving the Teeny Tiny Forest, Deepening Connections to Land and Place for Mythic Learners in the Interest of Cultivating Ecological Care. And it's a beautiful way to finish out our panel this afternoon. So over to you, Rosetta. Are you on mute? Oh,
great. Can you hear me? Because my Wi-Fi is.
Your Wi-Fi seems unstable. So you might need to take off your video and just do audio for us today if it keeps cutting out.
Okay, 1 second. I want to, yeah. I have something to share, but it won't allow me to share it.
Okay, why don't we do this? Why don't you, can you send it to me very quickly and I'll get it up within a minute of you starting to talk?
I just made Rosetta a co-host, so she is able to share.
Oh, okay, now you can share it. Okay.
Okay.
Nice save, Duncan, nice save.
It's not letting me though still. Sorry. Oh, wait, here we go. We'll try that. Share.
I should add that this amazing group of educators ended up finishing their masters in a pandemic, so they're well with Zoom, unfortunately. Yeah. They had one class face-to-face and the rest of it was not. So we know Zoom. Okay, over to you, Rosetta.
Can you see my pictures? Great. So I did my action research in cultivating ecological care for kindy students. And our green space is behind our school and it's about an acre and it's not enclosed. And we call it the teeny tiny forest because we're teeny and we're the tiniest of the school. My biggest worry, so we had been practicing sit spots with our class tree. So they knew what a sit spot was. They knew how to sit on a sit spot, but because they had become stewards of the land, I wanted them to have their own sit spot. And I wanted it to be authentic, but I was really nervous how that would look, right? Because the teeny tiny forest is 1 acre, not enclosed, and I've got 5-year-olds everywhere. How was I going to manage that? That was my first worry. My second worry was I was afraid they would not be engaged, which was super silly because they were. And then my final worry was, what would they do when they're finished? Would they go disturb other students? Would they? So I was really worried about those were my worries. And then wonder, how did I fix that? I decided my only criteria for the sit spots, they had to choose a sit spot that was close to a landmark that they loved. So that was easy for me to manage. They chose, lots of kids chose landmarks that were meaningful to them. So rock slide, tree fort. The little girl sitting that's called Bird's Nest. So they named these landmarks. And then in my field guide, I wrote down Billy beside Bird's Nest, Trina beside rock slide. So I had a list and it was easy for me to manage these sit spots. And then for engagement, well, the lessons, IEE lessons are amazing. They're the best. My kids loved role play, they loved mystery, they loved binary opposites, they loved story, they loved imagining themselves as creatures, a bumblebee, and drawing their, dandelions. So that became no issue. And then if they were done early, they got to get their tongs, and they loved picking up garbage. And that was one of their favorite things, was to pick up garbage when they were done. They weren't disturbing anybody else, and they helped. They were stewards, so they were helping still at the same time. And that's it. I hope I spoke fast enough. We've only got a few more minutes.
Thank you so much, Rosetta. I love that. And it kind of was a theme, from hesitancy, from a bit of worry and wondering how we're going to do this, to wonder, has been very, very powerful tonight. I think we've learned a lot already. Rosetta, if you could close your screen or stop sharing, then we'll see our massive Brady Bunch group again. Can we close? Oops, Rosetta, are you able to stop sharing your screen? Or yes, she has. In fact, she has. Okay. So welcome back, everybody. We've got a lot of questions that are coming in, and I'd like to work through a few of them. Some of them will be a bit more directive. I know that somebody's asking, Jenna, if you could repeat the names of the books that you mentioned in your study. Could you type those into the chat? That would be fantastic. And maybe before you do that, Jenna, can you speak a little bit more about the nature agreement? How did you set that up?
Sure. So the nature agreement we co-constructed together. So we always have at the beginning of the year an essential agreement, and that's kind of the rules in the classroom, and we brainstorm together and we create it. So the nature agreement was just feeding off of that. So we talked about how we have a peaceful classroom, and then outside, how do we want to interact with nature? And so we brainstormed, and I think on the image that I showed, it was on the far right. And it had, so the kids wanted to be bucket fillers in nature, and we had just finished bucket filling. So that's how it feeded into that. They talked about saving the bugs rather than hurting them, not pulling from the trees. So we brainstormed it together, then we kind of narrowed it down, and then we all talked, and it was really together, the co-construction. And then at the end, we did handprints. And we did it in blue and green to represent the earth. And so that was their agreement, and they were able to work together to hold each other responsible. So when they saw friends that might not have always been fulfilling the nature agreement, then we were able to gently remind and work towards that. And it was in our room. So we would look at it before we went outside, and would refer back throughout the year. And I will type in the books.
Thank you so much, Jenna. I have a question here, and maybe a couple of our panelists can respond to this one, and then there's another one coming. Which of our panelists could speak to this one? What are some of the aha moments you had when you began taking your learners outdoors? Does anyone have an aha moment on our panel that they'd be willing to share? The other question, which you might have an answer to, oh, Denny, you have your hand up there. Denny, tell us about an aha moment.
Just quickly, I did respond to the person who asked this question, but I'll share it out. I had a kind of a challenging group last year, and I was a little bit hesitant to go outside with them. And what my aha moment was that one of my students who just could not self-regulate in the classroom, when he was by the lake, which is close to our school, he would sit and he would be calm and he would look at the birds on the lake or what, and it completely changed his personality. And that was a real aha for me because I didn't expect it. It brought out that calm side of him that I wanted to see. So that was really great.
Thank you so much, Denny. I think Kelsey wants to add on to that, and then we'll move to our next question.
I think one of the things that I definitely had an aha moment about pretty early on, and then it kind of kept coming up, is to kind of set aside some space that is time and space that is unstructured. I think especially when we first go outside, the kids are so excited to be outside and look at this, and this has changed, especially if you're returning to that same space over and over again. So intentionally building some open exploration time before you invite them to do an activity can be really helpful in that. Then there's no tension between, well, we need to get the activity done while they're going off on a tangent, and if you go in prepared but without expectations, a lot of times during that open exploration, they find things that are so much more amazing than you could have ever planned for, and a very beautiful emergent learning can come from that. And then you take that lesson and you stick it in your back pocket for next time. So it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Thank you, Kelsey. Alyssa, did you want to add to that one?
Yeah, I was just also thinking, for me, I think in the beginning, especially going out into a large open forest space, I was having some of my own fears of risk around, we're sharing this area with other people, and the things that could happen, the dangers. And that, I think, was kind of limiting me from allowing my students and myself to be more open to those experiences. So I think I had to it was much more enjoyable for me and more meaningful for them when I was able to kind of step back. And now, like, we have expectations around boundaries, but it's more, I really say to my students, go where you, like, your boundaries are where you don't feel, if you don't feel comfortable anymore, then you've gone too far. You need to return back to us. And I kind of let them have more of that freedom. And then they're building, I think that is all part of the relationship building too, is that when it is kind of contained and we're here only, which I know, depending on, I know it's different situations, but I think if you can be a little more comfortable, it will really, that helps to make everything a lot more enjoyable for everyone and meaningful.
Very, very important that we as the educators are familiar with the place we want to invite our students into. And so taking time to collaborate with that place, to spend time in the place is really important. I'm going to move to the second question. I was asked a question in the chat that I wanted to address as well. And that came from somebody saying, do you have a specific PE example? And I think for this, the physical education is embedded in so many of these walks, but it isn't called specifically a PE example. For example, in the middle of the curriculum, there's examples of a walking walk. So it's where you focus on walking, the movement of your bodies. We have, of course, John Cleese in there. We want to have a ministry of silly walks. We just get the body moving in kind of fun-filled ways. But there's also one called Critters, Rodents, and Raccoons Walk. So how do we, as a whiskered animal, move? And so it's another example of how many of the walks have movement and have exercise in them. But in some ways, the walking curriculum is a misnomer because it's never about getting steps in, although that might happen. Sometimes the walk doesn't move us much at all. We might be seeking a line, or we might be seeking corners, or we might be seeking borders, and we end up hunkered down and we don't move at all. So first part of the answer is within the walks, you'll see the movement embedded, but then within the last portion of the book, there are some specific movement activities for high school. Rosetta, did I see your hand up?
Yes, I was going to say that a lot of the cognitive tools that you can use, you can incorporate PE with that, right? So we would play tree squirrels and ground squirrels, run to your favorite landmark, or tag games. So you can incorporate lots of gym activities into your IEE lessons.
Thank you, Rosetta. That's perfect. I'd like to ask Shannon maybe, and Krista, maybe Andrea, who haven't spoken yet. The question is, how do you sell outdoor learning to hesitant colleagues? Ooh.
Got it.
Okay.
I got it. You need
Andrea, you do this.
You need to find somebody to be your partner in crime and try to convince them to just, and I say physically bring them with you on a lesson. Invite their class to come with you and just for them to see, because that was my experience, was a lot of hesitancy, but I teach grade 1. I invited the kindergarten teacher who was already on board with it, but she came out with me with her class to see it. And really after that one lesson, what she saw, she was hooked. So I think it's just, instead of talking about it, it's physically bringing them with you to see the lesson. That's my advice.
Thank you, Andrea. That's brilliant. Shannon and Krista, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that if you show people, I'm thinking admin right now, if you show your administrators that you can actually do reading, do writing, do math, you can do everything that you do inside the classroom better if you do it outside. And this is why. You can show them how you assess. You can show them what assessment can look like and how some of those reluctant learners, or the learners that aren't excelling in a sit down, be quiet, boxed in classroom environment, you can show them how well they're doing, that you can't deny it. Like it's the evidence is right there. Take a video of them exploring, connect it to the curriculum, be like, boom, there it is. Now you tell me why I can't go outside, because this is amazing, and they'll be on board.
Thank you, Shannon. Krista, did you want to add to that?
I think that if you've got colleagues who are seem sort of like not on board with it, it's probably because they're scared of it. I think at the beginning of last year, all of a sudden I got the class that I had and all of my plans for doing ecological education, I was just ready to scrap them all. I was like, I can't do it with this class, or I can't do it because of where our school is. There's lots of reasons for why you can't do something. Denny, I'm sure, hit a point where she was like, yeah, but I can't do it because I'm French immersion, or I can't do it because I have kindergartners, or I can't do it because I have grade 5s. Like or high schoolers, there's always an I can't. And I think the thing is, if you sit there and say, what are your I can'ts and how can I support you through them? And just kind of come at them from a place of like, I get it, because I was there and these were my I can'ts and this is how I worked through it. I think that's a really great way to get other people on board. Buddy classes, someone mentioned buddy classes in the chat. That's amazing. Shannon and my class are buddy classes this year, and we took our kids outside for a color walk last week. So, and now we're tying it into similes and we're going to do some fun art stuff with it too. So,
and it was pouring rain and they loved it.
Thank you so much. I am going to suggest we take a quick pause. I'm very aware that we said we would go until 5, but I'd like to invite us to stay a little longer, that those who want to. We do have a few prizes, so if it's okay with everybody, I would like to return to Trevor and Natalie's questions, if you don't mind staying on a couple of minutes. I'm passing it over to Duncan to give out a few prizes, and those that need to go at 5, please do. So Duncan's going to give out prizes. While he's doing that, we would love to return maybe in the spring and have another webinar, but we'd love to know what you'd like to learn about. So if you have thoughts on a follow-up webinar, please throw those in the chat while Duncan is announcing who's winning prizes. And then whoever wants to stay, will return to your questions. Thank you for your patience. Duncan?
This is amazing. This should have been like 5 hours, but I know that's hard on Zoom. But anyway,
126 people.
I've been super inspired. So thanks to all of you. Just so Canada's nonprofit outdoor learning store is a social enterprise, a charity run by charities from coast to coast. And we've got 2 prizes from us and then 2 prizes from another nonprofit, Take Me Outside. Well, I think 2 prizes from Farheen. So first off, I've drawn 2 names for winners of 2 $50 gift cards for our outdoor learning store. And I'll put them in the chat so I don't, so that you can tell if it's you, if I get your name wrong. But it's Gretchen Morgan and Isabel Desbiens. Congratulations, winners. I will email that along to you in a little while, and I'll pass it over. Is Farheen still here?
I am. Thank you, Duncan. And thank you to all the presenters, panelists. This was amazing. I have 2 outdoor journals to give away from Take Me Outside. they're weatherproof. You can take them outside and, you know, write on them, and all weather. Anyway, they're great. They're on our store, but 2 of you get it for free. And the 2 winners are Miss Sheila, and these are just the names that are on Zoom, and Trina Gray. So congratulations. If you can just private message me your email, I will get in touch with you and then we'll get them mailed out. Thank you.
Awesome.
I want to also take this moment to put a shout out to a new resource that's directly related to the walking curriculum, and it is an arts-based resource by the great artist Adele Kantz. It's Playing in the Muck and Other Arty Stuff. And she has created just a brilliant video to give you a sense of what's in the resource and why and how it can supplement your walking activities in ways that develop your students' artistic skills. Duncan's going to put into the chat the link to the super cool video that she created to share that resource. So for those of you who'd like to stay a few more minutes, I know we have a few more questions, and if our panelists, I know I promised 5 o'clock, but if you can stay a couple more minutes, please do. Otherwise, a sincere thank you for this experience. It's been fabulous. Trevor, you have a question for us. I think you're on mute. Trevor Zara? Let's see, does that work?
Pushing the right button on the right screen. I don't know that I typed in a question. I typed in a couple of comments. But
oh, I see your hand is up. Do you have a question?
I was
clapping.
clapping.
Oh, you're clapping. Oh my, okay, I get it.
But I did just put in there. I did just put in a comment. I'm high-fiving. I did just put in the comment that when you have another one of these, please get in touch with me and I'll donate a sitting log and deliver it anywhere in Canada. You guys are amazing. What you're doing is thrilling to me. I've been in the play environment development business for 35 years, and I wish we would have had this energy and enthusiasm and connection to the land 35 years ago. So good work.
That's really generous. Thank you so much, Trevor. Thank you very much. Please, maybe we can be in touch moving forward, or you can be in touch with Duncan. That would be ideal. Natalie, you had a question or a comment. Natalie Butters?
Oh, I just want to share our school. What we done is I've taken the teachers on a Pro D Day and actually took them out. We have a little force. I teach at École des Deux Rives in Mission. So we're just above Heritage Park. And so we have access to that forest, and I did that. And then I actually took the principal also after school. She had to drive to New West, and she was a bit stressed and said, why don't you come in the forest with me, just so that you can see actually where we have little classes that we can stop, because there's little areas that you can, that are more convenient to teach. And she's the one that actually had the moment, because we saw a pic-bois woodpecker, and it was really, really close, and we were able to see, and she's the one that would, you see those moments that some of the kids can have. And from that, we this year have on Wednesday afternoon, I actually accompany teachers with their classrooms because of that outing. So sometimes it's worth doing that, because yeah, it's good for me because I get to go with the teachers. So that turned out all right.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for sharing that, and for indeed inviting your colleagues outside. It seems a simple step, but it's a crucial step. And I think it's also really effective if we're inviting our colleagues outside and we're not experts. We just have a passion and we have tools to play with. So let's just learn together. That is a nice kind of a relationship to develop. And also, if you realize that you're learning from the place itself as well, it's a different perspective. Completely. Kelsey, you have a comment, and I think then we might try to wrap up unless there's another question.
I think just along the lines of what people are saying about inviting colleagues out, I think sometimes taking away the burden of teaching as well, to say like, why don't I come with your class? Find that release time. Why don't I come with you in your class and I'll do the teaching and you get to just observe. And I think sometimes when we're able to step out of, being the leader of a group, and we can step back and actually make those observations and to notice patterns and trends and to notice curiosities, I think it ignites a certain excitement within people. But when we are trying to keep track of 30 small people as they move through space and ensure safety and all of that type of thing, I think we can't engage in that observation in the way we want to. So, if you're able to take over as leader and really invite them to be researcher, really is another great way to bring people in. And it gives you a chance to work with another group of kids too and test out your own curiosities.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. Natalie, did you have something to add finally?
Yeah, just sorry to take your time, but what I did also for those classes, I went to Value Village and bought a whole bunch of backpacks, $2, $3, and I filled all the bags at 24 bags altogether through the year and put like a magnifying glass, a sit spot that we made in math with just an old tarp and a newspaper, duct tape, so that it wouldn't cost too much.
Brilliant.
So we filled it, and then now when we go, we have 24 bags, and the teacher doesn't have to worry about anything. So that also, I know it was more work for me, but I think it's worth it in the end, because now they want to go.
And it is important that we have comfortable clothes, because I'm not comfortable if I'm wet and cold. So it is important to consider ways to have jackets on hand. And it's important that we think of ways to make this accessible to all learners, not for all families. So sometimes we might need to request some donations of clothes or keep clothes. There's always clothes left behind year to year. You could develop a stash of such things in your classroom going forward. So thank you everyone for being here today. It's just been a great pleasure, and I'm just mind blown with the incredible teachers that have shared tonight. And honestly, I can't believe I get paid to do my work, because I get to work with educators like this, and it really is inspiring. So thank you also to the over 100 educators that came out on their own time to learn more about imaginative and ecological teaching. We'll do more webinars about this, and I hope that you'll return the next time we do so. So from me and the panelists, thank you so much for coming tonight. And be safe, stay dry if you're in BC, and take great care.